Oh, I see.
Okay, it's live. Hey. Okay. Hey, everybody. I have a wonderful and special guest, and we did a hangout. How long ago do you think we did a hangout? Like
2-3 years ago?
Yeah, a long time ago. Lauren Myers is here to talk with us, and we're just going to chat a little bit about eating disorders, eating disorder recovery. I've been hearing from a lot of you that you've been wanting more content on this and more chatter about it. And Lauren has been really a force to be reckoned with when it comes to her recovery and really fighting to figure out what is triggering it, what's good, bad, and different. And we've just been chatting recently about different health issues we think attribute to eating disorders. And so that is why I was like, let's do a hangout about this, because I think that it's more common than we realize. And so that is what we'll talk about today. So do you want to tell them anything little about yourself, Lauren, or is there anything? First of all, can you guys see her? Because for some reason on my thing, she's not showing up. Let me know in the comments and I shall look for them.
Yes.
But do you want to tell them a little bit about how you started in recovery? I think that's always a good.
Yeah, that is a good question. Okay. Can they see me, by the way?
I'm opening it right now.
Okay, because I'm like, I see you now.
Go for it like it's happening. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think the point when I started recovery was my senior year of high school. So that was only 3-4 years ago. And I was to the point where I had other people noticing that I was going through some things internally around me, and they were prompting me to get help. But I was in a point where I was like, well, I should get help because they're saying something's wrong. So I wasn't to the point I was fully committed to recovery. So I did the whole I'll just do this to make them happy. But then in the end, I relapsed. And then after that, I was just like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I got a counselor, went to a dietitian, saw my doctor, and got my health in check and wanted to see, what was going wrong with me physically and mentally. And that was just kind of my starting point.
Gotcha. And it's interesting. First of all, just so you know, they just see your photo. I'm not sure why. It shows just your cute little circle photo when you're in Iowa and Nebraska at the same time.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's cute.
I know. I see myself and I see you.
Okay. Well, I'm sure it's just internet stuff. Like it'll come back up because you were up. She was up earlier, you guys. We were all good to go. We have 15 viewers. Yay.
Yay.
So I think for a lot of people, I think that's a very common feeling, like we don't like how we're feeling. We feel like shit. We're really annoyed with it, but we still we're not quite wanting to recover. And it's like we do it for other people a lot first. And I've heard from many of you questions I've received recently where people are like, Katie, you say in order to recover, you have to want it. And that is true in the long run. But to start, that's not so true. You don't have to want it from the beginning. I think that might even be like an anomaly. I don't think anybody wants it. That means that we're just willing to give up our one coping skill that has helped us forever without any other coping skills or knowing if it's going to be okay. I mean, I don't know if you disagree, Lauren, but I doubt anybody really wants to, unless you're like rock bottom, you can't get out of bed, or I don't know, like things could be, you could be in a hospital, forced into a hospital, anything like that. But I don't think anybody wants it from the beginning. Like you were saying, you did it for other people.
Yeah.
So know that that's very normal. What you all are experiencing is very normal. And I think that it's okay to not want it at the beginning, but to keep going anyway. Because I don't know, when do you think you started to want it for yourself? Because I could guess based on, our conversations and me knowing you for so long. But I think it took a while.
Yes, it definitely took a while. I would say I always struggled with eating things throughout my life, definitely a big challenge. And it just kind of hit that, I guess, full-blown aspect, you could say, my senior year of high school, the fall of it. And then spring is when I wanted to get better because I wanted to go to college.
Exactly.
Motivation.
Imagine. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to figure out, because it said that people couldn't leave comments below our thing. Sorry, guys.
I can't see. I don't know if I'm supposed to see a comment box, but I don't.
No, because it said disabled on my side, and I'm trying to figure out why the heck that even says that.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see. Sorry. Sorry, everybody.
So you are.
We're only 4 minutes in, so we've already covered a lot of ground. Let's be honest. Okay, let me see. Sorry, I have to go in a weird way and like when it's live. Okay, here it is. Katie and Lauren. Sorry, guys, I'll enable your comments in a second. I think I just have to change the, I don't know why it, there
I
we
got
go.
the Q&A pulled up. It just says features disabled, so I see that now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why it says disabled. And then if I say info and settings to edit, advanced settings, enable live chat. I think that's enabled. Okay. Automatically block spam messages. Allow comments. Yes. Users. It says they're enabled. I don't understand. Why? Sorry, guys. We're figuring it out. I don't know. It acts like it's just all good. Okay, let me go in one more way. Sorry, guys. Bear with me. And then get your questions ready because then we'll do more chitty chatness. Okay, so if we go back to it. Sorry, it's just an annoying system. And it was interesting. So every time I do a live hangout, they've always changed it. And so I always get in like the day before and I'm like, hey, what the hell is going on with this thing now? And blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it's always changing. It drives me crazy.
Adding features.
Okay, Sean is hollering, do it Twitter. Do it via Twitter. So we will do it via Twitter because I cannot change it. It will not allow me to make the... Okay. Sorry, guys. None. Insert. Yeah, can't do it. Okay, so if any of you are wanting to ask your questions, because it for some reason will not let me make them okay, and it won't let me approve your comments, because it says that they're supposed to be, it says all even. I even took off anything. So anyway, you guys will have to ask your questions on Twitter. So if you haven't followed me on Twitter, it's at Kati Morton, and I'm getting in that now because I was already chatting with Lauren in there before. And so I'm in my notifications. So if you have a question, send it out to myself or to Lauren, who is at Lola739. Or you're private though, aren't you?
Yeah, I think I am.
Okay, so send them out to me at Kati Morton, and I will keep refreshing that page, and we will answer your questions. But so to go back to kind of your path to recovery and things like that, like I was telling all of you, and the way I kind of introed this was that Lauren and I, thought that there may be more to this women's health concerns and issues, and it feeding into the eating disorder, or even potentially in some people's cases maybe causing it. And I don't know if, Lauren, you think that it caused yours or it made recovery harder. And I don't know if you want to tell them a little bit about what you've been struggling with, what women's health issue you found out that you have.
Definitely, I can share that. So over the message. So this past year, I was just dealing with a lot of pain and just not feeling myself, a lot of fatigue, and I was just very worn down, and I thought possibly that I had a kidney infection or maybe a UTI, and I went to doctors, and they kept doing blood work and pap smears, and it was just like, oh, you might have an infection, and we're not sure what's going on. And I was very frustrated with that doctor because I didn't feel like I was being listened to, let alone being treated adequately. So I ended up going home for a portion of the summer, and I was still having a lot of pain and a lot of issues. And I had an ultrasound and a CT scan and some x-rays and more blood work and shots. And they're like, well, you're kind of like a similar patient of mine, and she has endometriosis. And the only way we can find out is through surgery. So I ended up having surgery, and they found out that I do have endometriosis, and I also had internal bleeding. So that explained my pain and my fatigue and, not really fully being myself. So I found that out, and I could tell this summer it was affecting my mental health a lot because I was on medicine I didn't need, but then also I was just so exhausted, in pain, and I was feeling like I wasn't being heard, and I was just, to a point, I was really desperate, and nobody, was figuring out what was wrong. And I was considering taking a medical leave from campus if they didn't figure out what was wrong, but luckily they did in time.
Yeah. And for those people who don't know what endometriosis is, could you tell us a little bit about, I mean, obviously neither Lauren nor I are doctors, but from your understanding, what is it? I mean, I've had a couple of friends that have had it, so I know a little bit about it, but.
Yeah, so pretty much when you menstruate, your uterus lining sheds and you bleed. And with people with endometriosis, it's in other parts of their uterus, or in my case, it was outside of my uterus. And, those spots just decide they want to bleed, like they're, like you're menstruating, and causes issues and a lot of pain, and they have nowhere else to go, so it becomes trapped. The tissue does. And mine was on the outer lining of my uterus, so that's why I had it in my abdomen, the internal bleeding. And it's really good they caught it early, because it could have spread to like my bowels or my bladder or my lungs, and that would have been a mess.
Yeah, no, and it causes a lot of intense pain. And the thing that I think, to go back to like our original discussion of like why we think that eating disorders and these kinds of female health issues, I guess we'll call them, I think like feed into, no pun intended, into the eating disorder, that it really, like the pain, the lethargy, also the mood shift. A lot of people, when you're placed on, because my friends that had endometriosis, and I mean have it, I guess still, they were treated with birth control. And a lot of people don't talk about how birth control can make you gain weight. It can make you not feel like yourself. It can cause you to feel really out of control emotionally. Like I've even had friends who've switched to, what was that? It was Yaz was the birth control, and it made them like psychotic kind of. And you told me that when they put you on one of the birth controls, they're like, oh, you may have a psychotic break, but no need to worry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so connected, because for the guys out there who maybe don't understand, I mean, obviously guys have always heard of PMS and stuff like this, but it's more of the fact that our hormone balance is being played around with, and it can make us feel really out of control. And I've heard from a lot of different people that they have things like endometriosis, and I'm still forgetting the stupid name of my dentist had an eating disorder, and she blames it on a women's health issue. Do you know what?
Is it the PC?
Yes. Yeah. So what's it called? Its full name is
polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Yes, polycystic, yes. And so she believes that, and you can Google that because I don't know enough about that, unless do you know enough about it, Lauren?
I just know a little bit. I had a friend in the past with it, and she actually gained a lot of weight as well. And I don't know. I know she has disordered eating. Not sure if it's like diagnosed, but I know she contributes her weight gain to it.
Yeah, and that's pretty much and it's funny that it's my dentist, but it's because she knows what I do, and she was like, I've been wanting to talk to you, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. Just keep doing your thing. But she attributes her bulimia that she struggled with, she would say most of her life. I mean, the last maybe 6 or 7 years, she's been okay, but it still rears its ugly head from time to time. And she only went into treatment once, and we, as like her and I chatting, think that she didn't get the treatment that she needed, but her polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I think she had like cysts that were also occurring. Anyway, it really made her gain a lot of weight periodically. She would gain and then she would lose, and she could never lose it on her own healthfully because of it. And so it led her to try other things, because her mother was a disordered eater, and there's all the other factors that we talk about as a community that we know can attribute to eating disorders. But having this whole mood dysregulation and the fact that it's like an actual health issue feeding into it just makes it that much harder and that much more intense. And she thinks that's why it was so hard for her to get into treatment, to even take treatment seriously, all of those things. So So just tracking along, so we know kind of how you started in recovery. I know from a lot of people out there, they ask me about getting a support team and who should be on your support team and how often do you see them. And do you want to tell us a little bit about that part of your recovery?
Yeah, definitely. So earlier this year, I've been seeing a counselor for many years, and I see her weekly, but I reached out to my on-campus nurse back in like February, March kind of area, and I see her weekly as well, along with a dietitian about every 2 weeks to a month. So that's been pretty helpful, and it's just about how I'm feeling and how my health is, and what things we need to work on and what things like I'm okay with and don't need to work on. So pretty helpful. It's a good support team.
Yeah, no, and I've always been really impressed with your support team, and knowing that you get to see your people and, when you need them. And somebody asked Judith, who, if for any of you who haven't watched her channel, I'm subscribed. She puts out videos, and a lot of videos that she does that are like, kind of rebuttals to me. Like she'll do a, video response, but she's asking some creative ways to pay for treatment when insurance is covering nothing. Now, is your person through university, is she free? I'm just curious.
Yes, the nurse is free. She is here 3 days a week. And I just found out they're trying to cut her position, which is very upsetting for students because it means our lack of healthcare on campus for physical and mental health is very limited, and it already is. And our counseling services is free to students, but you can only end up seeing them once a month. So that's why I went to a counselor off campus, and my insurance covers that. And then I see a dietitian at a local grocery store in my town, and that's out of pocket because insurance can cover it, but it's a very long process. You have to get like blood work and tests from your doctors and letters. And he was to the point that, we couldn't wait 3 months. We had to get started right away. And she did offer me like a discount because of like packages. And stuff.
Nice, because you can buy certain numbers of sessions.
Yes, it is. But like as a college student, like one, just cost in general is very rough, let alone when you have physical, mental things. It just makes things even more difficult, and you become very creative.
Definitely. And I think that goes back to something that a lot of people struggle with paying for healthcare. And this is just my opinion, and I don't usually give opinions on stuff like this, but I don't think Obamacare has changed anything. It's not helped anything out. Like people I've talked to are like, well, now I pay more. Yay. No, that wasn't supposed to happen. And so ways that you can advocate for yourself, just like Lauren has done, is like letting them know that financially it's really difficult for you. And we do work on sliding scale, and people from time to time do see people for free. I've done that. I'm not doing it currently, but it's been like a year ago. I saw a girl for years that I just saw for free because she couldn't afford to pay. And so there's no shame in asking. And is there something we can do to help petition for the school for you so that you don't lose that person?
Yeah, we actually just got a petition started today, and I actually found out right before I started this Hangout. And I'm like, she's a great support to me, and I don't want to lose her. But also like talking about like women's health and reproductive rights. We petitioned to even have pregnancy tests on our campus, and we won that. But it's just crazy, like the lack of services, and those are the big things to help students and to keep them on campus and to keep them healthy. So yeah, it's a struggle, but also like I know a lot of students who are uninsured, so it's easier to go to the nurse here and see what's wrong. And some people, don't want to feel like they're hypochondriacs, and so that's another story.
But if there's anything that we can do as a community, let me know, because that'd be a terrible loss. And I think it's hard enough for students to get help and I'll even admit, for part of grad school, I was uninsured because I couldn't afford it, and they kept raising my rate, and I had to cancel it. And so I just like, no whammies. When I just go to the doctor, I have to pay cash. It just kind of is. But let's hope if there's anything we can do, if there's like a sign online petition thing, let us know. I'd assume it has to be students, but however we can let people know, we're happy to help.
I'm not sure. I'll have to check, but I just know, like, I'm a big advocate. Like, things that I've been through, I love to just make people aware of it. One, to get help, and like to prevent it. That's a big thing for me. Just be there for people and help them in any way.
exactly. Okay, so trying to think if there's, oh, Carly agrees with me that Obamacare isn't cheap. Oh, okay. Somebody has an interesting question about eating disorders. Lambert does, and he says, is anorexia the opposite of bulimia?
I don't think so, because I mean, like, I don't think so, just because I know with my experiences that, you know, some people, even though they may be bulimic, they may be like restrictive.
And I think by saying it's the opposite, like that they're opposites, like anorexia is on one side and bulimia is on another side, I think it's a little limiting as to how they can show themselves. Because the thing that, and I hear a lot of this actual answer a bunch of other questions that I have waiting in my queue. A lot of people think that if you're bulimic, you don't lose weight. Somebody asked that recently. Well, if you're bulimic and I'm underweight, or if I'm overweight, could I still be bulimic? And yes, it's all about diagnostic criteria. And I'll be putting out new videos, you guys, about the different eating disorders, because things have changed in the new DSM. I didn't think it was anything that was like hugely changing to how we talk about it and how we treat it, but a lot of you've asked for it, and so I will definitely deliver. But I think the thing that we're missing is that bulimia is when we, just as anorexia, feel really unhappy about how we look and don't feel like our body is the way that we want it to be. We eat more than a normal person would eat in a normal amount of time. And I know that normal is not a word we like, but it's like, think of it just like you eat more than an average amount that there is to eat in a very short period of time. So like if I all of a sudden right now in 5 minutes ate like 10 cheeseburgers, that's a lot of food in a short amount of time. That's a binge. That's all they say. So there's no amounts, there's no numbers. So a lot of people are like, but that was a binge to me. Then that's a binge. That's it. That's all there is. If it feels like a binge to you, it's a binge. I don't think of it as like numbers. I don't like numbers. It's really triggering and bad. And then there's compensatory behavior. Not all bulimics purge through throwing up. Some of them exercise, some use laxatives. There are a lot of different ways that we can do things that are not healthy. That leads into, not to complicate things, so that's bulimia as a whole. And then there's anorexia, where we're extremely underweight. There's a certain restriction. There's actually a number of a percentage of what our body weight should be, which is nothing that you can determine. It has to be determined by a dietitian, a doctor. It's at less than 85% of your ideal body weight. You're not going to be able to calculate that. So don't BMI yourself. Don't think that that's going to tell you. It's something that a physician has to do. And that's really the difference right there. Boom. So bulimics can gain weight, lose weight. You can have trouble. You can be underweight. Anorexics have to meet that criteria. That's really the only difference. I don't know if you agree or disagree, Lauren?
I think definitely with the criteria for anorexics was definitely a struggle, because like you've talked about before in your videos, that people think they're not sick enough, when in fact you are. You need help, and like you're worthy of help and recovery. And I think that was definitely a big struggle with me, is that I showed all the classic signs and symptoms of anorexia, but I didn't meet the weight criteria. So that put me in EDNOS or OSFED, since it changes all the time. But then it was very difficult, because it felt like some people were validating because they understood that it is an eating disorder, but then other people were like, well, it's not those two that we always talk about. So it felt like people were invalidating me, and that was frustrating. But I had to learn to advocate for myself. And going off the numbers thing, I would always be like, okay, I'm in a stable place and I can handle, you know, these things being around me. And then I would relapse. And then I realized, like, okay, numbers are triggering for me, and that they do have to be out of my environment. And I slowly, weaned myself off. I noticed that, I weighed myself, I went from like X amount of, times a day to X amount of times a week, and then just kind of weed myself off. And that was the same with like my tracker. And before I knew it, I was able.
I know, I remember about your tracker.
Yeah. And I was just able to feel like I didn't have the need to use those things anymore. And it was great. And it was very relieving for me, actually. I just didn't feel like I was held down. And I realized that, people say it all the time. And I know when you're in recovery, it's just kind of like, well, I'm not really sure about it, but it is like you realize how like obsessed you were and how many things you're missing out on life and not enjoying.
Yeah, no, and it's I couldn't have said it better myself. I think a lot of people don't recognize how
Yeah.
stressful / difficult we're like the eating disorder makes it on us. I think for a lot of people it's like we're running, and I don't even know if I want to use the analogy of running, but I feel like we're caught in a net. Like we're like fish swimming, but we're caught in a net. But we are still swimming. Like we are swimming as fast as we can swim, but we're not getting anywhere. And we don't realize that the eating disorder is that net, and that we're never going to get where we want to get because it always holds us back because we're too busy worrying about how to fit in all that exercise it tells us we need, or how we're going to be able to fit in eating in that bizarre way where we don't want anybody to see how we eat, so we have to eat on our own, or how much time it's just stealing from us every day, monitoring, thinking about things, ruminating. Yeah, and I want to go back to also the fact that you talked about how EDNOS or OSFED, which is the new, I'll do a video about it, but it's the new, I have a video actually called EDNOS Doesn't Exist, and I talk about why they changed the name of it and all that. I don't really like it. OSFED, it makes me upset.
Yeah, I don't
it's
either.
hard to even say. I'm like, no, it's not otherwise not specified. It's feeding or eating. It's too much people. But it being invalidating. And I hear that from a lot of my clients. I hear from a lot of my viewers. And I think that it's because eating disorders are competitive, and because they're so fully monitored and they're so intense with us, and they tell us that we're not good enough all the time anyway. And it's just another thing for it to like glom onto. And the funny, like, dark little secret, and you guys can disagree in the comments if you want, but I think even people have a hierarchy within all of them in general. So I've had patients with bulimia that are like, well, I'm not anorexic, so I'm not sick enough.
Yeah.
And I can tell you all, just so that you can kind of shut your eating disorder up for at least like a minute, I've seen people get really ill / have heart attacks / some people die from all of them. And actually, I would venture to say that I think EDNOS or OSFED is one of the most dangerous because it doesn't present in a visible fashion all the time, because it changes. And I think that makes it more dangerous. But, you know, that's not a, who wants a more dangerous thing? Who wants to, you know, but that's, you know, now I'm just getting off track. But I think, you know, it's important to like recognize that the people feel invalidated with that diagnosis.
Yes.
Okay. We have more questions. Is there anything that I'm missing that I haven't asked about kind of your process that you'd like to talk more about?
Well, definitely the numbers, getting that out of my environment and not feeling the need to use it was very helpful. But then also figuring out what type of therapy works for me, and also knowing that I can choose a different doctor, choosing another therapist when we didn't really click was very helpful for me. And also having that support team. And definitely it's very awkward at first, but like advocating for yourself and setting up boundaries has been the most helpful thing for me.
Yeah. And boundaries around who? Because people have a lot of trouble. I talk about boundaries all the time. How did you set those up, and how do you uphold them?
Yes. So definitely it relates to your recent video, toxic relationships and around people. I thought that, you know, I had a really good group of friends in the past, but I just, you know, was wasting all my time and effort worrying about them. But also at the same time, I call them kind of one-uppers and know-it-alls. So I felt like I was always being invalidating. And after I kind of cut the ties with them, I just noticed my recovery went a lot quicker than I was thinking I was more than ready for, and I actually was. So that was pretty exciting, and I was very proud of myself for that. But I'm kind of the person who cares about a lot of people. So I wrote a letter to them and just kind of was like, hey, we can start over. We can talk about things if you want to. And it was just my way of just setting up boundaries, but also feeling relieved and not like things ended on the wrong footing. And they've never replied to me, but I definitely feel a lot better. And also there are times where like I'm in Greek life and I live in a sorority house, and sometimes people will say things around appearance or weight that's very triggering. And I just say that, you know, that's something I'm struggling with right now. Can you please not mention that? Or I just try to counteract what they're saying. Or if need be, I just get up in the room. Yeah. So.
And it's hard. Like I don't pretend that setting boundaries is easy, or cutting ties with people that we maybe have been friends with for a long time, but noticing how you feel. And if you're feeling worse around certain people, it's like back to my old video years and years ago about toxic relationships and toxic people. And I think that's something that we as, I don't know, just as human beings don't put enough weight into, and enough, we don't notice and pay attention to how bad or good people can make us feel. And I find as I get older, as I'm out of Greek life, I'm out of college, I'm out of grad school, like the people that I decide, and I think that's the important word for me, the people I decide to keep in my life aren't that many people. And my people who I allow to be new friends, like, oh, I'm making a new friend and meeting a new person, I'm very particular about them. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think that we have to learn together how to better stand up for ourselves, because I know for a lot of people, like if someone, that situation you were just talking about, Lauren, like being in your sorority house and somebody saying something that's really triggering, like I know a lot of my viewers would say like, well, I couldn't say anything. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but then instead we're being hurt. And I think it's important that we know that we're just as important as everyone else. Everyone is just as important as us. And so together we can make it a safer, happier place for everybody. Because if you're in an unhealthy relationship with someone, romantic or friendship or whatever, like even if it's a family relationship, you can't tell me they're happy in it either. And so the sooner we start trying to build healthy relationships where we actually feel good and like we're getting something out of it, and we leave being like, man, it was so good to see them, and da da da, that's how we should feel. And I think a lot of times we get lost in the like, I don't want to offend anybody, and we're the ones that then end up being hurt or kept down, or, you know. I'm really proud of you. Yay.
Yeah, it's like really awkward at first, but it just becomes easier and easier after that. That's how I feel, at least. And something you kind of touched on a little bit is throughout the recovery process, I've learned that certain words, you know, I don't know if I want to say they're triggering, but they make me very uncomfortable. So luckily my support team notices certain words bother me and certain phrases do or don't, and they always change that. And we find something that makes me more comfortable, because I noticed I don't like the word challenge or challenges. So we always say like goals or a bucket list or someday I will, you know, finally do this. So that's been very helpful, because of course, when anybody feels uncomfortable, they're just going to be like, I'm not going to do it anyway. So I'm very fortunate that they noticed that, and we've been able to work on that and talk to each other like, that bothers me, I'm confused about this, or they'll be like, I'm confused with your thinking right now. What do you mean?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people hurt our feelings without really knowing why, or not knowing, like I talked about in my video yesterday. I'm like, what day is today? It's Friday, Katie, get your shit together. But in my video yesterday, I was talking about, you know, the boundaries and everything. And I think a lot of it's just not communicating. And so we end up getting hurt, but we haven't told them, you know, what actually is hurting us. So they don't know how to not keep hurting us. And as much as I would love this, people cannot read our minds.
Exactly.
And although it would also be kind of good / bad, because sometimes you're like, I'm being an asshole in my head and I don't want anybody to know. But most of the time we're like, please take me out today. It'd be nice if you'd hug me, you know, and we wish that they could just read our minds, but people can't read our minds. So.
Yes. And I've learned that over the past couple of months, like advocating.
You're back.
Oh, am
back.
You're
Success. Back. Okay. Sorry. I got really excited.
No, that's okay.
I saw you moving in your little box and I was like, yay, she's moving.
You too, so hopefully that's good. But no, I've noticed that in the past couple of months advocating for my health, that I need to be direct and upfront with people. I know sometimes that can seem like a negative thing, but in my mind, it's creating that two-way conversation rather than one way. It's not like you're, you know, lecturing someone. You're having a conversation with them and just saying, you know, I think this is wrong, or I need this help. And that's been the most like beneficial thing for me in the past few months.
Yeah.
They're not mind readers, like you said.
Yeah. And it's so rewarding. That's the thing. Like, yeah, it's really hard work and it's uncomfortable. Like, I can't tell you how many times it's really awkward / uncomfortable for me to talk to Sean or one of my friends and to tell them like, hey, that hurt my feelings. And it may be that I'm being very sensitive, but this is why it hurt my feelings. And or apologizing for something because I think I hurt theirs. Like that whole interaction, I will be honest, I am not a confrontation person. I get really awkward. But after having some of that, like getting it going, then I feel so much better. I'm like, oh, now it's not like stuck in my head, and I'm not feeling anxious about it, and I'm not worried about, treading on eggshells, like, oh, I hope they don't mention that again, or I hope I don't, it just makes it feel so much better.
Exactly.
Yay. Okay, so let me look. We have some more questions. Somebody wants to know what or who is my biggest inspiration. I may have to come back to that one. I mean, honestly, the short answer for you guys is every one of you. You guys inspire me and keep me motivated, keep me wanting to do this. I know I put a video out about people who send hurtful comments, and you guys never see them because I don't approve them because they're assholes. But it's all of the people that are supportive in our community, and people like Lauren and, that are open to sharing their stories and to being transparent about how hard it is, but we keep working anyways. And that's like, I feel like that mirrors what I do for you guys, because it's really hard and it's a lot of work. And some days it's harder than others. And sometimes it doesn't go as planned, or sometimes I thought somebody was going to film with me and they don't. And I'm like disappointed. And, but I, prevail anyways. Yes. So I think it's all of you guys. I know. Internet hugs all around.
Yes.
Okay, so then let's see. Somebody's in Australia.
Ooh,
Tanya. She stayed up. She's like 4:40 a.m.
Oh, wow, girl. Go you.
I know.
I think I noticed a question. Somebody was talking about journaling, and I know you always talk about that. And
I do.
I know I was like everyone else. I'm just like, journaling, talking about my thoughts, writing them down. But I found what style of journaling helped me, which I love art. So doodling was my form, or just like writing poetry, writing short stories. And it actually does really help, because I feel like when you're physically able to put something down, it's like it's disconnected from you and it's not a part of you. So it's just kind of like a release, and it's very therapeutic and cathartic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's funny because I used to journal a lot as a kid and even as a teenager. And then as an adult, I find that I do it less. And for me, a way to, like, it sounds silly, but journaling, I don't even put words to page that often. I do sometimes, especially when I'm feeling anger, because I don't like to feel angry. And so I'll jot that out like, rah, rah, rah. But coloring is my therapy. It's my journaling. And it doesn't have to be, like when I did that video with Hannah Hart about it, because she just does like thought dropping, and you don't have to start out like, dear diary, today I did. You don't have to do it that way. Nobody says you have to do it anyway. It's no one's going to read it except for you. So, and you might not even read it.
And I think that's what scares a lot of people too, is they think it has to be like X, Y, and Z format when it's whatever you want to do.
Yeah. And they asked about the most important part of journaling. What do you think that is?
The most important part. It just depends. So if it's something about, maybe my emotions or where I am in my recovery, I feel like it's helpful to look back and see how much I've grown. But I know if like I have journals from when I'm younger, it's not best for me to look at those because sometimes they're triggering, but it's a good thing to give to my counselor so they can at least learn a little bit more about myself and my life. So, I mean, it kind of goes both ways, but I think it's nice to see the progress and how much I've grown, because sometimes I can look back and be like, I can't believe I was so worried about that. Like, I'm so far past that. And it's wonderful.
It is. And I think that sometimes we need that reminder that, like, because even myself, but I tell my clients this all the time. I'm like, you think this is the end of the world right now, but ask me in a month and you won't even think about it anymore. And that's the truth. And it might not even be a month. It might be a week. It might be until that deadline that you're stressed about. But in life, I think a lot of times we turn, molehills into mountains, and journaling is a nice way to look back and be like, oh, that wasn't a big deal at all. I don't know why I thought it was such a big deal. And so I think one of the most important things in journaling is to not hold back, be honest, because then you have the stuff that Lauren is saying is so important, because otherwise, the only person you're hurting by not being authentic in your journal is yourself. And so some of the things that you're afraid of mentioning, some of the things that feel so icky or shame-filled, know that it's okay, that that's your safe place to put it out there, to get it on paper, and to like put it away. and know that you don't have to think about it anymore, but it's there.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And something along the lines of, I guess, you know, some people can view journaling as coping mechanisms, but I know what works best for me is just saying like it's my toolbox, or maybe just a hobby or something, you know, with self-care that's been helpful. I view it that way, but something that bothered me for the longest time is that I would not be in the mood to journal anymore. And that's just because it wasn't working for me at the moment. So I would go and do something else, like with my Play-Doh or stress balls or coloring, or maybe just being active and going on a walk with a friend. So, you know, people can know that, you know, along with that, you know, coping mechanisms and like your little toolbox, those change, and that's okay, because that might not help your situation at the moment. Because that's something I struggled with, because I'm like, I need to journal all the time and that's what helps. So I need to keep doing it. But sometimes that's not what you need at the moment, and that's fine. Just find something. Yeah.
No, and that's great advice, because that's why we have a whole toolbox and we don't just have one tool. Because there are going to be times when we don't feel like it. I know myself, like sometimes I'm too tired. I'm like, oh, I'm so emotionally exhausted, or I'm just physically exhausted. And I'm like, I can't really just write right now. That's just not going to work for me. And so we have to have other things like Play-Doh, silly putty I love too. Even, you know, coloring, like I was saying, that's what I like to do. Coloring is good. Friends to call, go on hikes, walks, whatever. You want to have a full list. Like I'm working on finishing up the LGBT workbook, you guys. I promise it's coming. It's just Apple's stupid. Okay, so I want it to be in the book, in the iBookstore, I guess, or whatever you call it, but the Apple bookstore, so that you can put it on a tablet and read it. But their programming is so shitty. If you're watching Apple, it's bullshit. They put zero money into it, and it's so not user helpful. It's like chaos. Sean's like, oh my God, Katie, we can't even select this. I'm like, I don't know, I can't. Okay, I'm done for today. But I'm working on it, and I was looking through creating a safety plan, because that's one of the videos that I'm going to link at the end of that workbook, so that you can create it if you haven't. And in that, I talk about having tools that work in daytime and in nighttime, and how important that is, because I know nighttime is hardest for most of you. You've expressed that a lot. So we want to make sure that go for a walk is not something we're doing in the middle of the night, because in our it's not safe. It's not a safety plan. That's unsafe. I don't like to know that any of you are walking in the middle of the night. And like, if we're supposed to call somebody, if they're in our time zone, we can't call them at 3 a.m. So what do we do at different times? And so take that in consideration when you're thinking of your tools and thinking of whether journaling helps or doesn't, so that you have things you can do no matter what time of day it is.
I love that. That's great, because that's a good thing to remember too, that some of these things aren't, you know, in a certain time frame. You can't do it 24/7 for certain.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I have good friends, but if I called them at 4 a.m, my friend Liz would be like, are you kidding me, Katie? I have to be to work in a couple of hours. So yeah, it doesn't always work. Okay. Oh, somebody's asking, and I can answer this one really quick. They say, is it normal to randomly feel like you're in a dreamy state? Natalie asked this, and feel like you've lost control of yourself. What it sounds like you're talking about, and I have a video about this, about dissociation or maladaptive daydreaming. I think I have a video about each, if I remember correctly. But that is very common, especially if we have a trauma in our past, or something that has, I guess trauma is just the best word, but anything that was really pivotal in your life that was really bad. A lot of people dissociate or have maladaptive daydreaming to cope with it. And so I would encourage you to see a therapist. EMDR is really helpful for that. And I'm hoping to soon be able to get someone that does EMDR on the channel. I know a lot of you've asked about it, but since I don't do it myself, I didn't want to do it any disservice. So, because it's a very specialized thing.
Yeah,
but anyway,
I have little experience with it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things I feel like I need someone who really knows it and does it to talk about it, because there's a lot more to it than just what I know, because I've had clients do it and had someone explain it to me. I really want to have someone on who talks about how and why it works.
Exactly. So. Yeah, definitely seeing a therapist has helped me a lot with my dissociation, but also finding what grounding techniques work for me. And sometimes I have to realize, like, okay, this one's not going to work, so let me try a different one. And I know that the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is a pretty helpful one for for some people. Smells are like stress balls. I know for me, like just talking to myself, saying I want to be grounded helps me a lot. So, I mean, it's very complicated, but, you know, it's very hard sometimes to figure out what sets you off. But you know, don't be hard on yourself, because I have to learn that it's something that happens and it's just going to come when it does. And I just have to, you know, try and stay calm and not worry about it too much.
Yeah. Because the weird thing about it is the more we worry about it and ruminate on it, the worse it gets and the harder it is to pull ourselves out. And I know that's really difficult for everybody listening, but maybe that's something I do more of too, is like grounding techniques and everything. But everybody's different. Like, but you can go through your 5 senses and find something. Like one of my clients keeps a little piece of flannel in her pocket because that feeling is something that's very calming and it's something that keeps her present. So there's a lot of different things you can do. Smells, I mean, that works for a lot of people, and Lauren said that's the best for her. So just trying different things out, but know that dissociation, maladaptive daydreaming, all those things are very common, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're not losing your mind.
Somebody said their son has worry balls and glitter bottles.
Ooh.
And I've seen the glitter bottles. You can find those on Pinterest. Like, they're pretty neat. They're kind of like those, you know, like a lava lamp. They kind of look like.
Oh, yes. I've seen them. And doesn't it like, it kind of floats like.
Yeah. So it's just like a calming thing. So those are really good too. Those are helpful. Somebody said that if we had any advice on bad and negative thoughts to get out of that. I think getting out of maybe like ruminating.
Yeah, maybe like thought cycles or something like that.
Sometimes it can be really hard to get out of negative thinking. And I think the part is noticing it first, which is really hard. But then once you notice it, it's like, it's really awkward at first. But for me, it's just like I have to counteract it and change that type of thinking, or at least talk to somebody and like be reassured that it's just not too irrational, or if it's like a rational thought.
Yeah, no, and that's a good thing to consider. And it's actually a journal topic. It's funny that this is coming up because it's something I've been working on, and I have it for my journal topic next week. Because I was like, I think this is important, especially with the holidays coming. But something that I do, and this first is like building off of what Lauren said, because first you have to notice how often you do it. And just the other day I was telling Sean, we were in the car, and I was like, I feel like I'm just like negative thoughts right now. Like recently, like the past couple of days, I just like am judgmental in my head and like rude in my head and negative and just like running through worrying about things that you can't change, like just not healthy or healthful thinking. And so I was like, you know, because I'm not the type to not do something about it. Even if it's hard, I'm like, I gotta change this. This is terrible. And so I was like, well, I think I'm going to try what I used to do when I was a kid. And this is funny, but something I used to do as a kid. And I don't know, I was a weird kid, I guess. But I would notice if I was being really negative and judgmental about people because I knew I didn't like that characteristic. I didn't want to be that way. And so what I do is when I think like, okay, let's be a very simple example. Let's say a person is crossing the street and I'm like, oh, that is a terrible outfit. What were they thinking? I immediately force myself, like almost like I have like my mother in my head that's like, no, okay, now what's something nice about that person now that you've been a total asshole? And so then I'll think, you know, they're in a rush and they're getting on their way, and I'm sure they had a lot going on today, and they're just going to meet with someone, and I'm sure they're a wonderful person. Like I have to negate my negative the same way that I tell you guys to negate your own eating disorder voice or self-harm voice. I implement that for myself in my own life to make sure that I get out of ruts, get out of negative thinking. And I think the thought cycles, we can kind of implement the same thing, because if we find ourselves going back through it, we have the ability to stop in the middle. Like, okay, so finish the thought. Okay, so I'm going back into saying nothing's ever going to work out. My life is a shithole. This is all terrible. Whatever our cycle of nasty is, we can go into it and then finish your thought, your shitty, horrible thought, and then stop and be like, no, now I have to say a positive thing back. I have to negate this so that I don't just keep going around. And I know it sounds like it's like easy, but it's really hard. But
it takes a lot of time, but it gets easier.
Yeah, and it does. It gets a lot easier the more we practice it. And so just be patient with yourself, because I even noticed that only maybe twice a day am I able to actually do the thing that I'm supposed to do all the time when I have a thought that's not healthy or helpful. But that's an improvement. That's 2 more positive thoughts than I would have had before. So you got to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what helps me, at least. And that's something, it's funny because that's what I've been working on currently. See, I'm work on myself too. I'm a work in progress too. Okay. Is there any other? Oh, you froze again. Yeah.
Oh, I think bummer.
Yeah, I don't know why. I see you, but I get, yeah, you're frozen. Oh well. Somebody's like, she's frozen. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I get this question a lot, and I don't know what your thoughts are on it, Lauren, but they have the name Shoot.
Okay.
They said, is it possible to manipulate myself into a disorder? Like, can I create my own disorder?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
I think more in recovery, it's kind of along that line of thinking, but I have a hard time distinguishing whether it's my disorder or if it's actually like myself. So sometimes I don't know, like, is this actually a normal worry that my peers have, or is it my anxiety acting up? So I guess it's kind of similar to that. And also I think it's a way for disorders and other illnesses as well to kind of tell you you're not as sick as you can, because I thought like, oh, maybe, I really don't have an eating disorder and I'm just like, blowing this out of proportion, this diet or whatever. But then I realized, no, it's actually a disease and it's trying to like manipulate, fool me into thinking I'm not as sick as I am. So I think it's a sneaky way illnesses are, trying to fool us into not thinking we're as sick and trying to be like, I'm actually helpful and not hurtful, when in reality, the other way.
No, and that's a great distinction and a great thing to mention, is like how our like eating disorders specifically will be like, I mean, I can't tell how many times I'll have a client who is like on the brink of going to inpatient. I'm like, I'm really worried about you and I won't be able to continue seeing you. And in the same conversation, they'll be like, if somebody asks me like, do you have an eating disorder? I'll be like, what? No. Me? No. And they wouldn't feel like they were lying.
Yeah.
Because it's really manipulative, and it'll be like, no, you're really not that sick. This is all in your head, because they're sneaky. Yes. And so I don't believe you can manipulate yourself into a disorder. I believe that situations in your life can happen that, like, because of other struggles and everything, it can create a disorder. That's how they come to be. We have something happen. It doesn't have to be a big traumatic event. A lot of people are like, well, my life was happy, but how come I have an eating disorder? Because it's a coping skill and we're using it in a different way than somebody else. But everybody's different, and we're learning more. And I may soon, keep your fingers crossed, have a geneticist on to talk about how that links to things. I know, right? I met her at YouTube the other day, and I was like, where have you been my whole life? So I think that there are a lot of things that are already in play, and therefore we cannot create our own illness. But we can make it worse, or we can make it better. And that's where our control lies.
Well, I think
it's not in... Go ahead. No, go right ahead.
Really well too. Yeah, because I think, just stigma surrounding it, any illness in general makes people feel that way, like they're making it up, when in reality you're not. It's valid, and it's not in your fault anyway that you have it. You can work on getting better, and you're worthy of it. Because even when I was dealing with my health stuff, I had doctors telling me, that my mental illnesses, were making, they pretty much said like, oh, you're not really having these physical symptoms, it's all in your head, maybe it's your anxiety, when in reality it was a physical thing. And it was very frustrating. They told me to get some acupuncture and to come back in 2 to 3 months because nothing was wrong.
2 to 3 months? You're like, each day is horrible.
I was like, no, something's wrong. And that's another thing. Listen to your body, because usually it's telling you something's wrong and something is. But I just think the whole stigma and people being, doctors, maybe being in a rush, or people being very uneducated and generalizing things causes a lot of issues.
Yeah. And that's the unfortunate thing. And hopefully as a new wave of physicians come out into the world as they graduate, my hope is that we'll see an improvement in the way that people manage and talk about mental illness and mental health issues, treating it the same way we would treat a sinus infection or a broken leg.
Yes.
Like things don't just go away, and we're not like, oh, just keep walking on it. Come back in 2 to 3 months. What? No.
Yeah,
That's not how this is
actually,
gonna. Yeah.
with me being the person I am, I was like, oh my gosh, this doctor might be treating other patients the same way, and I don't feel comfortable knowing that. So I wrote her a letter. I wasn't expecting an answer, and she actually sent me one back, and I met with her, and I sent her one of my blog posts beforehand about taking care of yourself while taking care of others, which gives more insight into my mental illnesses in my life. And I actually found out that she has a similar connection and experience as me. And she apologized and said, you know, I was in a hurry and probably said things that I shouldn't have. So, I mean, if you're and the person's open, you can talk to them. If not, like what I did, I found another doctor, and you can do that with therapists as well. You know.
Yeah. I didn't know that was the doctor.
Yeah, it was. So it actually turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to like advocating for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And
so much.
Yeah. And we're a community, right? So like you potentially saved, who knows who came in to the office the day after she read that or any day following. But you know, potentially help somebody else out, knowing that, because doctors are in a rush. That's the shitty thing about our system right now, is that they're overworked and really underpaid. The doctors making gajillions of dollars doesn't exist anymore, which is really sad. And so they're usually rushed, and I'm really proud of you. I didn't know that was the one. Yay!
No, it was.
Now the story comes full circle.
Yeah, Katie and I were talking about that.
Yeah, she told me about the letter, but I was assuming it was somebody. I don't know. I just didn't assume it was that one. I was like, oh no, it wouldn't have been that one. But,
yeah, I met with her, and it went really well. And I actually got a survey from like the main, I guess, organization, like the head of it, and just kind of wrote about like, you know, I talked to her, she was receptive, sent a letter, but I said, you know, it might be asking a lot, but just a small amount of education on mental health. Very helpful, because I'm like, she generalized things and was negative and was stereotypical. And if I wasn't in a stable place with my recovery, I probably would have been set back even further.
It could have been terrible.
Yes. You know? So I'm fortunate to have doctors in the past who I was very, very lucky to have ones that were not stigmatizing. So I knew when I encountered this one that something was up, and thankfully she's actually, you know, learning with me.
Yeah. And then that's the thing, like, it goes back to like our conversation about boundaries and communication. Yes. And I think a lot of people don't even know that they're being offensive or hurtful or triggering. And I think that goes for professionals as well. I'll even speak personally, like when it comes to the trans community, that's not my specialty. And I know that I've said things that were incorrect and people were hurt. And that was never my intention, but having you communicate to me the proper way, like you communicated to her, writing the letter, like then I took that information in, I did some research, I realized how I should have said it, you know, and like we can learn together. The way that we don't move forward together is by lashing out. And if you were to be, you know, to be like, you're such a stupid idiot, but that doesn't get anything across. But like by taking the time and putting the letter together and letting her know like where you're at and thinking about it from a standpoint of, I don't want her seeing someone else and doing this because I'm in a good place. And if I wasn't, this would be terrible. Then together we grow, you know, and nobody's perfect, but we can learn together. And I think that that's really cool. And I'm glad that she was like, yay, you know, she took it really well.
Definitely.
Awesome. But it just goes to show like people can improve, and you know.
Exactly.
So, okay, so we have time for one more question. Unless there's anything else you want to talk about, Lauren, do you feel like we covered?
I think we did cover most of it. I'm trying.
I'm trying to think of
a different question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last question that I have is from Carly, and it says, is it common to sort of jump around between various ways of coping, from eating disorder to OCD to self-harm, etc., without getting extreme with just one? So you kind of just hippity hop along, depending on probably how you feel and what's going on.
I definitely believe it, and I've experienced it. I was talking with Katie a little bit earlier before we went live, but you know, I was in a very stable place with my recovery process for my eating disorder, and the birth control, just the weight gain, just, you know, mentioning that side effect was more triggering than I thought. And luckily I had a really good support system and team that I still continued to maintain and be stable in my recovery, but I noticed my anxiety spiked and I was worried about not so much like food and exercise, it was just about medicine. So my focus was worrying about medicine and what it will do to me and like if I can't stop the symptoms. So I definitely noticed I was going back and forth with that. And then for a while, my dissociation was pretty upfront because, I didn't feel like I was being validated through my health stuff. So, it just kind of went all over the place.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. It's just that sneaky thing too, is that sometimes you're like, oh, I'm doing fine in this. And then you may think like with me, I always thought like my eating disorder was one of my biggest coping mechanisms. So I kind of forgot about my anxiety and dissociation. So I didn't really realize that they were being as upfront and as obsessive until I had my support team say like, you're being really hard on yourself. You need a break, take a rest.
Yeah. And I think, I just have to agree with you completely about your thoughts on it because to answer Carla's question, it's very common. Just like Lauren's saying, like something else came up and then, I hopped into these other things. And, I thought I never had to deal with this anymore. It hadn't happened in a long time. Boop, there it is again. And I think that that's way more common than we give credit for. And I think going back to like what we talked about in the EDNOS or OCFED or whatever the hell we want to call that stupid thing. I refuse to even learn it completely because I just don't like it that much. But I think going to that conversation about feeling invalidated, I think the fact that we hop around and things pop up and rear their ugly head, but nothing is like happening all the time. Because I think Carly's question said like, without getting extreme with just one. So let's say your eating disorder hadn't been the most prevalent and it would hopped up and around too. I think that leaves us feeling invalidated because we don't have one thing that's really happening, but that doesn't mean that we're any less sick or struggling any less because it'd be like a simple math equation. Okay. So we have 10 struggles with our eating disorder, but we have 2 of OCD, 2 of self-harm, 2 of the eating disorder, 2, it ends up adding up to the same amount of issues and struggles, and it ends up being just as difficult. And so that is very common. I have had a lot of clients. I'm trying to think of who I'm like what people's diagnoses are now, but who never really meet the criteria for something, but they really struggle with the symptoms that they have because their 5 symptoms when they need 7 of this or something are really intense, but they don't quite meet the criteria, which leads us to feeling like we don't really have something. But that's not how mental health stuff works. It's not black and white. It's very gray, and you can have dissociation, like Lauren was saying, like I never thought that was coming up again, and you can have things pop up periodically and be difficult, and that doesn't mean that you don't struggle with it. Just because you don't meet the diagnostic criteria doesn't mean that you still don't struggle. That's honestly the DSM, when people are like, but the DSM says, the DSM is just a guide. Exactly. It's just a guide for insurance purposes, to be truthful. It gives me a little idea of treatment planning, but it doesn't even share, it doesn't tell me how to help my clients. It just tells me how to know what they're struggling with, which still doesn't tell me how to treat my clients. And so if any of you are frustrated with the DSM because, well, I don't fit into anything and I'm NOS for everything or whatever it would be now, others specify, I don't even know. If that's where you find yourself falling, know that that doesn't really matter. Having one diagnosis doesn't make it any more difficult or any easier or anything. It's just symptomology that you're experiencing. And the DSM is just kind of a way for, I think, insurances to know how to pay and for clinicians to get a rough idea of where you fall so that we can kind of help you the best we can. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm like, I know it's a lot, but like that, those are my thoughts on it. And I know that it's really disheartening for a lot of people because then they feel like you talked about the EDNOS thing and feeling like it's not as severe or it's not as real. And, I know that our head can tell us those things, but know that clinically that's just not the truth.
Exactly. And us talking is the start so people can know.
Exactly. Exactly. Completely. Well, thank you so much for being on, Lauren, and for giving us your time and sharing your story.
Yes.
And you have your blog. Do you want me to put the blog link?
Yeah,
blue?
you can do that. I have a couple articles on Proud to Be Me, and then I have my own, and
Okay.
I'm part of the community too.
Hmm.
So
Yes. And
yeah,
you can
a lot of
tweet me those
places I'm
links. Okay, tweet me the
Yeah,
links and I'll put them below for everybody so you can check it out. Because
definitely.
Lauren's an OG Kenyan. She's been here forever.
Yeah, I know it's
And I
growing
like,
so
I
exciting.
know. Isn't it crazy? We'll see what this next year brings. You know, it's really cool as a community to watch it grow and
Hmm.
to see how the cool thing for me is like how powerful we essentially are.
Hmm.
We can be a force to be
How much
reckoned
we
with.
grow.
Yeah, you know, and like advocating for things like things that are important to us as a community, we can put our weight behind to be like, I don't want that to take place. Like, we don't want you to lose your nurse. So
Exactly.
there's something that we can do, then we'll do it, you know,
Yeah.
because now we can kind of we're stronger together. There's power in numbers, and we can advocate for things that are important to our community
Mhm.
and to its members. So thank you so much for being on, and thank you all for watching. Leave your comments below, and I will be putting out a video on Saturday. This week has been a lot of videos. I hope you've enjoyed it. And a Hangout, I mean, hello, I'm everywhere. That's why I was like, what day is today? But for those of you who are new to the community, I answer most of the comments, and I do get in the comments still periodically in other videos, but Monday's video that comes out this coming Monday will be where you'll ask your questions if you have a question that you want me to answer. And I will see you all next time. Thanks, Lauren.